Good morning, friends.
Morning.
And this week we have a very interesting discussion for you with our friends from the Bamford Quaker community, who I don't know how long they've been going, no doubt they will tell us, but it is still, I think, an interesting time for all. So friends, whenever you're ready, over to you.
Okay.
Right. Well, we could give a little bit of history.
Yeah. By the way, I'm Jane Meadows.
I'm Cindy Metcalf.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've been in community for the last 4 years and coming up for discernment in December.
Yeah. And I've been here 3 years, but my discernment is coming up next April.
Mhm.
We do blocks of 3 years service, as is usual in Quaker jobs, but we can renew up to 3 times. So it's not a permanent home for any of us. And the maximum that you can stay here would be 9 years.
So the community was established back in 1988 as a residential housing cooperative. And they had difficulty about, what, 20 years? About 20 years it operated like that. There was about 13 children here. Wonderful place to bring your children up, but of course when you have the children leaving home, you have empty nests and people started to question why they were here. So and also they kind of stopped
I've only driven my old car for 20 years. Oh, I'm sure I will.
It's going to that first like few days.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
okay, so that they once the children had left, then there was only the adults more or less here, and then there was a questioning of who's doing what, when they were doing it, and it ended up with quite difficult conflicts within the community, and they decided to disband. So people went and moved around and moved into their different places. We've still got about 4 or 5 of those individuals or families that live locally in the village. Some of them just live down the lane, some of them live in Bamford. And that seems to be a theme, that people leave the community, but they don't want to leave the area, so they stay in the area.
Or Sheffield, because Sheffield's only 14 miles away. So
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, community life is challenging,
Mm.
shall I say. Okay, but the last regeneration happened in 2012, from 2010 to 2012, and now we're on, it kind of does in waves, so it kind of builds, plateaus, drops, builds, plateaus, drops. So we're on that cusp of regeneration now. Yeah, although we are struggling at the moment to find people who are willing to be in service to the Society of Friends. It's not an easy ask. So so we may be kind of in that kind of place of change again, from being a place of retreat and service to something else completely. We don't know. So we're working on it at the moment.
One of the difficulties, I suppose, with our model is that in 2010, well, between 2010 and 2012, in order to improve the building, they remortgaged. So we do have a very large, well, £250,000 mortgage. So not only do people have to, if they come here, give their time, but we also pay rent. And we are finding that that's quite a challenging model, especially, I think, especially more after COVID, because people really are thinking about, it was a wake-up call for a lot of people, wasn't it? What am I doing here? Why am I doing it? And I know that throughout the country and probably the world, it's getting very difficult to find people to do Quaker jobs as it is within our own meetings, within our own area meetings. But to come in community is an even bigger ask. And you know, not everybody is cut out for it.
No.
So yeah.
So we've got a little exercise for you.
Do you want to show the video? Should we
Oh,
show the video?
we'll show you the
We'll show
video
you the
first.
little bit. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to go into it to edit the group's fair bit out, but you know, it's only
This is the one we did for the group's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so we did have a little exercise about living in community, which was the kind of good side and the bad side of living in community. So would you like to start with
okay. So if you all think about someone you maybe don't get on with, someone perhaps presses your buttons, rubs you up the wrong way, whatever, and think about the qualities that they have that does that for you. You know, for that person that you find challenging. So if you'd just like to name a few things that you find most irritating in that person, perhaps that you've thought of, and just speak it out. Just speak out if you want to. Or
yeah.
Or
I'll kick off and say, like, rudeness is something that pushes my buttons. If somebody is just blatantly rude for no reason, then that's something that pushes my button.
I don't like people to be bossy.
possibly, right.
Okay, good one. Have you got one, Ray?
Well, I have a couple of people who I know who want to tell you things. They don't want to be involved in a discussion. They just want to talk at you. And when you try to add something, they will talk over you. So it's kind of, you want to go, shut up. 2 minutes. You know, and it is that type of person. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise for me, not listening to what you're saying. Yeah, and being too busy thinking about the next thing that they're going to say to listen to what we've got to say. Sorry, Chris, you were going to say?
Yeah, the one time I've kind of lived in community, one of the things that drove me around the bend was the fact that people would put their washing in the machine and then not take it out, or leave it on the air and not, remove it once it was dried. And although people explained to me that I could have taken it out or taken it down and folded it, my thought was that, well, actually, I could have taken it out, thrown it on the floor and stamped on it in muddy boots, and that would be my preferred way of dealing with it. So that really presses my buttons.
So practical aspects, practical things, and shared resources. Yeah, they'll get that. Have you anything, Graham? You need to unmute.
Yeah.
I think of one person who has a lot of detailed knowledge, and whenever the opportunity turns up, it has to be passed on, whether the listener is interested or not.
Right.
What quality would that be?
What quality would that be? Yeah.
Annoying.
Annoying.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, that could so easily be me, the annoying person. In that way, I definitely.
David, it's not you.
But it could be Graham. And I find myself somewhat constrained in groups sometimes, because of feeling that what I want to talk about is not of interest to others, and so I focus on what's happening at the time best I can. One thing I've noticed in groups, and I read a quote about it recently, which is that the agenda in a family or a group is often driven by the most needy person in that group, or the sickest person in the group, which is kind of emotional hijacking or blackmail even sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you listening, Mary?
No, I
You
think
don't
she's
know
gone
if
into the
Mary's there
doctor's.
or not.
Yes.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm waiting in an extremely busy, noisy car maintenance showroom.
Okay.
Count me out.
We'll leave you out then.
Okay.
Unless you have a quality of somebody that you don't know, that you don't get on with.
Sorry, do I have a?
Can you think of a quality of somebody that you don't get on with?
Yes, the non-listener.
Yeah.
Somebody with the sort of endemic, possibly solvable problems, and they don't ever ask you about yourself. But maybe that's the disadvantage of being a good listener.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, you'll learn more about the insides of a Toyota car.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Okay, on the flip side of this coin is people who you do get on with, and what qualities has your best friend or your the go-to person that you go to for help? Is that their qualities that you admire? So I'll kick off and say somebody who will listen.
Unselfish listening,
Yeah.
adaptability, and sort of a pheromone affection, I think.
Oh, nice, very nice.
Patience.
Patience. Mhm.
A willingness to leave me alone.
Willingness to leave you alone. Ooh,
Yeah.
very good, very good.
I think someone who is and understands how, I suppose, groups work, you know, and is prepared to get involved in a number of things, you know, and if things will go wrong, will be prepared to jump in and be part of the solution, rather than to hang back and say, "Oh, I wouldn't have done it that way," you know, or I think they should do something about it, type of thing, you know. And it's the person who is prepared to work with you on something, not criticize you, is my type of person.
So solution focused. Would that kind of sum that up? No, it doesn't really, does it really? Like a solution focus to a problem. So if there's an issue that arises, their focus is not on the problem, but a solution, to try and find a solution. That would be very helpful, very helpful. David?
Yeah, kind of building on what Ray said. It's people who in a group situation are sensitive to the needs of the group, especially the needs at the time, and by their actions and their words steer the group towards its necessary agenda and towards achieving something. So it's people who are sensitive to having a shared vision and helping create it.
Graham?
I haven't got much experience of characteristics of members of a group, but
No, this is more personal, like a personal, like
Anybody.
your own personal friend, anybody. Something that you admire that you've got in a friend that you really appreciate about them, that is helpful, or, you know, a quality.
well, my wife and I have just completed 56 years of married life, and that must show great qualities in her character and putting up with me for so long. And she is very caring.
So caring.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because all these qualities are, both the negative and the positive, are what you will find in community. And you can't think that everybody's on your side or on your page. Everybody's an individual, and we found kind of the golden rule, if this makes sense to you. The golden rule of do unto others as you would have be done unto, and it's kind of gone platinum, and it's kind of got you do unto others as they would like you to do unto them. It's kind of like a change of emphasis from how you see the world, how you would like to be treated, to actively treating people as individuals and knowing how they want to be acknowledged or treated or things. So it's a bit of a shift in the golden rule, really. And we found that living in community does create conflict, because we're all total individuals. and we've been looking towards methods of healing conflict or working with conflict to learn and grow. So we have one of our elder seers has been a practitioner of non-violent communications, and we have embraced non-violent communications to use within the community to help us in negotiating our conflict situations. Because behind every conflict, behind everything, there is a need that's necessary, that needs to be met from that negative perspective. So if you can find a need underneath that expression of just where the negative ones are. So if there's being bossy, for example, there's a need underneath that for some kind of an acknowledgement, perhaps, of maybe they have a feeling of a sense of authority, if you like, about something, and maybe that needs some kind of an acknowledgement before you start. So it's kind of finding people's needs underneath and not making people out as wrong or bad. So if somebody was rude to you, you can't say that was wrong or bad, and it's the challenge of being able to use communications in a way that describes how it makes you feel, and then what you would prefer. So it's been a steep learning curve and a real challenge for us in community to embrace this idea of non-violent communications, to try and work around conflicts and taking ownership that nobody is responsible for how you feel. You are the choice in how you feel. And when somebody's pressing buttons, it's how you deal with it and how you see things, and not other people to blame. So it's a very authentic, I think. It tries to help you be authentic in the moment, which is very, very helpful. We found it very helpful in working with our conflicts. Has anybody got any experience with working with this non-violent communication?
You have, David. You're muted.
You're muted.
So I am. Yes, I'm in Extinction Rebellion, and they use some non-violent communication and other things that they've lifted from the Quakers and Quaker sort of principles of communication and decision making.
And how's your experience been positive so far?
By and large, yes. I think that protest groups are necessary and often don't achieve the desired results. So sometimes, I'm more interested to see people working towards the solutions than opposing others. But yes, within Extinction Rebellion, there is more often than not a strong sense of community.
And we're finding now, with the change of community in our potentially needing to change, that there is different viewpoints that are being put forward that we are also finding it challenging to work forward as a group of people who we thought we were all on the same hymn sheet, and then we're kind of like been discombobulated, which is a feeling sense that of confusion, because it is a very confusing time now in the world, and we are definitely feeling that. So we're hoping that we can get some more solid ground. We have our solid Quaker faith and practice here that is definitely grounding, and we do try to be authentic in our appeals to people. Have you got any questions about living in community? Go for it, David.
Well, lots and lots, because I think it's vital, and we are living in fragmented nuclear communities at the moment. People long for community and search for it wherever they can, but we're not actively structuring it in the way that we live. Yeah, so
So do you feel there's a framework then? You said structuring. So do you feel that there is a framework that Quakers could develop to live in community?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's elements of Quaker decision making that I think are very transferable, including the ability to sit in a circle and not say anything until you've actually got something useful to say, rather than just keep the noise going. I once got a scholarship to go to Europe to study the global eco-village network movement. And they have a lot of wisdom on building communities and a lot of experiences on communities that are unsuccessful as well as successful. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and we need to be, you know, really alert to this and working with it at time. And the bit I mentioned earlier about somebody being ill can carry the agenda. Communities, I think, often need to do some kind of triage where people who are stressed or traumatized are isolated and held so that the group can get on with what it needs to, while other people are in a safe space rather than driving everybody up the wall. So yes, I mean the overall question is, how do we live effectively in communities? And I think you know it's wonderful that you're here and talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it really does feed into our needs at the moment to have more Quaker service, and to find those people who are willing. This is we sent 250 letters of invitation to see if any parks could find people within their meetings that might be willing to explore living in a residential community, and we didn't have any response at all. That is not one single response from our adverts or from our letters of need actually brought forward any actual potential members. So we've had about 6 people, is that right, through our doors, who have explored community and either found that being in a residential community isn't for them. We've had one member came for his 3-month trial that hasn't worked out because the community at the moment, we are not big enough to service his needs. So so that hasn't worked out. So, and we have another lady that's coming at the end of October, beginning of November, for her 3-month tryout. So it is hoped, you know, that we can still organically grow, slow but sure, in our movement forward. But as there's few of us, that's more work. We've got less people, less hands doing more work. So it doesn't look good. We look tired. Thinking, oh, community, oh, we're gonna have to work hard. But the more people we have, the less work, and the more joy you can actually generate, and the more synergy that is generated. But you've got to be kind of have those people that are willing to knuckle down just for a few months to collect and gather people together, which is it's a big ask. It's a big ask from the Quaker network.
I think one of the small analogies to that, which I would give, you know, I worked with the children, young people's groups for 27 years, and the idea of meetings that we find that had children's meetings are small. And the groups that do it well are those groups which have an existing thriving children's meeting. And then that meeting will grow to have lots more children and it be thriving and all this type of thing, you know. So it's rather like the chicken and the egg, isn't it? You know? Yes. You have to have the group before you can thrive the group, but you have to build the group. So, I understand your frustrations, friends.
Yeah, thank you.
David.
Yeah, are you familiar with Scott Peck and his work in
Yeah.
Yes.
Different Drum? Right, you know. So what Ray has just said is it's the story of the failing monastery, isn't it? You know, that Scott Peck tells, which is that if for those who don't know it, there's this monastery that's failing. You know, there's fewer and fewer monks, and they don't know what to do. But the leader eventually invites somebody, a priest or something, to come and visit with them. I haven't got the story in detail. And this person comes and basically sits down and cries with them, you know, and shares their grief and their sorrow. And at the end of the visit, he says, you know, I'm sorry, I leave, I haven't been able to do anything, but oh, by the way, one of you is the Messiah. Right? And he leaves on that note. And what was that? They're all saying to each other, well, I know it's not me, but, you know, maybe it could be brother so-and-so, even though he's so annoying, you know, and so on. And what happens is that they start to treat each other with incredible care, because on the off chance that they're talking to the one who is the Messiah. So they all move in that direction, and people in the nearby village are attracted by some shift that seems to have happened in this group, and the group starts to flourish. And I think, Ray, that is the same as you're saying about, you know, if you focus on creating a beautiful place for children, it will be attractive. It will bring people in. For of such is the kingdom of heaven. And Scott Peck, the work, The Different Drum, is all about principles of community, how you get groups from conformity, which equals pseudo-community. We're all Quakers, aren't we? We all believe the same thing, into chaos when somebody says, no, I'm having a problem with this actually. And then you have to work with that and, you know, empty out the ego, deepen the communication, and then a truer sense of community, some kind of coherence emerges. And I think that, you know, that's the right and proper work of communities, is community itself.
But you have, from that kind of viewpoint of Scott Peck and the idea of that of God in everybody, which we as Quakers have already acknowledged the Messiah in everybody.
Yeah.
So that kind of is a given, you know what I mean? In community here, it is a given. But there's something there that you said which resonated with me about the difference between caring about people and caring for them.
Yeah.
And as a community, it's very difficult to care for people. We can care about each other, and we can care for the grounds and the community's things, but actually caring for is a really big ask. Because people have needs, and we spoke earlier about our conflict resolution and the needs of people. And when the needs outweigh the amount of resources and time and energy that people have, then you end up being in conflict again, because you cannot meet the needs, and that creates conflict. So there is something about caring about, and we deeply care about one another, but there comes a line where you cannot care for people, because we're, as a small community, we can't do that kind of caring, because people, as you said, come with trauma, they come with their own kind of particular, nobody's without damage, nobody's perfect. And yeah, it's a challenge. It is definitely a challenge to care not only about, but to for, but it's about the level of need. It's about the level of need. And at the moment, we just haven't got that capacity to care for. I think that's the elements that we're finding in meetings all over the country, is that we have that somebody mentioned earlier about being driven by the needs of the individual that is in crisis, and that the meeting is being driven by that one person's needs. I can't remember who was speaking to that.
I think it was David.
I think it was David that was speaking to that.
Yeah, there's a wonderful series of videos, a film series on a community that got it badly wrong, which was the Rajneesh community in Oregon, and the film's called Wild Wild West, I think. And the point was, there was somebody quite controlling in their community that wanted to bring the community together. They had some conflict with the wider community and decided to take over the council. And they brought in busloads of down and outs from Los Angeles to swell the numbers at voting in the area. And those needy people tilted the community away from being generative and into being needy itself. And, you know, and it all degenerated into awful conflict. Which I genuinely believe was not the intention of the founder of the community. But you know, you get caught up. Gurus get caught up in the chaos of the situation that they have come into.
Yes, yeah.
And maybe that's the lesson they teach.
But is so the feeling then in moving forward as a community? Do you feel that maybe a residential community, because you don't really know people until you live with them, and you know, is that level of intimacy within you know, because we do try to live through the testimonies, you know, our core testimonies, but is that enough to sustain a residential community? You know, are there enough willing people who would like to explore that intimacy to actually carry us forward? Or should we just draw a line and say, right, let's try something else completely?
Well,
Become a Woodbrook of the North. However, you know, whatever.
I think that Quakers in general are very close to having the key to restructuring the whole of society the way that we need it. You know, we've just had a wonderful festival of how dysfunctional monarchy and democracy is. You know, we spent a whole week being shown, having it rammed down our throats, actually, how, you know, you can have the loveliest lady in the world at the top of the hierarchy and end up with a country in which public servants have to go to food banks if they want to feed their children. Right. So after 70 years of the glorious rule of Her Wonderful Majesty, was a wonderful, wonderful woman, the country is on its knees, right? So we're seeing that we don't know how to create community in our own country. But I think that humanity is on the cusp of a shift. You know, even the events of the last few days are showing that a superpower cannot impose its will on another state that is prepared to fight for its existence with heart and soul. And let's get beyond that and say, yes, everybody has a right to self-determination. Let's figure out how we cooperate and work with each other for peace. And I think that some kind of, you know, you can't have a separate little piece of paradise when the whole world is going downhill. So I think that the two come together. You know, that at one point, but we'll find it's easy to set up real communities because there's a sense of caring and cooperation in the world, and we're stopping looking on ourselves as nations and thinking of ourselves as the whole world is my family.
They've often said that the community here in Bamford is a microcosm of a macrocosm, and you know, we've got down to very few numbers, and we are just and so managing to hold everything, all the threads together to move forward. But unless other people are coming forward who would like to share the the joys of community life, like living with all those nice things, the nice things that people can be, and as Quakers, and all the healthiness that we can actually generate, then, you know, we're thinking, well, why are we here?
Yeah.
We just return to our little meeting and whatever, you know, because this is and you know, we don't want to give up. We don't want to give up on our vision. You know what I mean? It's hard to hold a really good vision and a hard vision of how community moves forward, and how, you know, just by having more people here that we are working with can work.
Yeah.
So has anybody got further questions?
I've always had the impression with being with Quakers, and I've been with Quakers for a fair few years now. And the big thing that is always a big part of me is the spirit moves. And it's this time when we are told that these things are happening, and we know within ourselves that these things are happening, and it is saying to us, well, move this way or move that way, or I'm not going to tell you anything. It's sometimes hard to sit with that moment or accept that thing over there. But I really do believe that the spirit within us will reveal itself to what it wants us to do within that time.
Yeah.
And as my brothers and sisters and everybody would tell you, I'm pretty lousy at waiting. I don't like it at all. You know, I'm one of those as a small child would have Christmas every month. But you know, and I think the hard bit is the waiting to actually, that things will appear, it will come to you that this is the right thing for us to do, but it's the blinging waiting that does it.
I think you're saying there, Ray, keep the faith.
How many are you in your community? You may have said, but I was...
Just us two at the moment. Yeah, but we still worship twice a day, but also obviously our guests, any guests that are staying here come to worship, and that's a really intrinsically important part of being here. I mean, we had 6 people to meeting for worship this morning, so the guests, even if they're not Quaker, just to come and sit with us, it's half an hour. We do 8 till 8:30 in the morning, and then we have epilogue 8:30 till 9 in the evening, and that is just it holds us all together, really. And a lot of the guests who are non-Quakers enjoy it as much, get as much out of it as we do. So it's an important pathway into Quakerism for some people. Yeah. A lot of people, come here maybe for a break, and they'll say, oh, maybe I should pop to my local meeting and see what's going on there. So it is,
like yesterday, last night, we had a lady who said, was asking about the local meeting where she was, and we may well be popping along, which is, it's always happening. Yeah.
How many, sorry, I've got people making big noises outside. I'm in a physical community, which is loads of flats, but we're all isolated, but we have a group who look after it, and they're being noisy gardening outside. How many physical spaces do you have? How many could you accommodate?
We have 7, we have 7 dwellings, dwellings, varying in size from a 1-bedroom flat to a 3-bedroom house to, well, we've got 3 3-bedroom places. And then we have the main house. Do you want
Yeah,
to?
main house has four rooms upstairs and 3 rooms downstairs. So at the moment, we do need to do some decorating, which we're hoping that we might be able to do in the winter. But we have maybe 9 or 10 rooms that we can, that guests use. So we've got capacity certainly for 5 or 6 community members without really impacting on the space that guests would need. I think our ideal number would be sort of 5 or 6 community members to share the work, and then our work-life balance would be much better than it is at the moment. But we have 10 acres of land as well, which is, so we have organic gardens, and most of it is woodland, which we leave it. We manage it when it needs managing, but we leave it for the wildlife and biodiversity. And we're unusually dry after this summer. We had got, there is a big pond, or well, we call it the swamp. It's not really as posh as a pond, but that's been completely dry for many months, which is really quite unusual for here.
When you say dry, I was because I am a person who likes the occasional beer and or a gin and tonic, type of thing. You know, what is the policy at Bamford then?
We don't allow alcohol in the main house generally, unless for a special occasion. But if people are, we do have 2 huts as well on the land that we rent out as self-catering accommodation, and people quite often drink alcohol there. Yeah. So we sort of discourage it, because to us the main house is like a meeting house. You know, we have, this is the meeting room that we're sitting in. Yeah,
and we have had community members in the past who've had alcohol issues and have had partners that have had alcohol issues, and to be reminded of those things we felt was really unfair. So we put that policy in for special occasions. They had no issues with the special occasion or something if others would like to. But it's a general thing that we don't we don't encourage it, and if people ask, then we generally say it's all right for a bottle of wine with meals and things. And but yeah, there's plenty of outside spaces. There's a pub up the road. You know, what more
community pub up the road.
A community pub up the road.
But funnily enough, it's friends, other Quakers that come and visit, that come with a bottle of wine or something, and we say, okay, are you going to drink that here? Because it says on our booking form, you know, that we don't allow alcohol, and it's very rarely guests that are non-Quakers that come with the alcohol. So that is something to think about, doesn't it? Yeah. And also our kitchen is vegetarian / vegan. You know, both for sustainability reasons, also just simply from an environmental health point of view, in that we would need so much more. We would need a separate fridge and what have you if we had meat and fish. So it says on our booking form, you know, no meat and fish. And most people respect that, but again, it's predominantly Quakers that come with their meat or fish. You know, we have to say, sorry, you can't put that in the fridge.
But that's not to say that if you're a community member that you have to adhere to those rules, because we have, as I said, we have 5 outside units. You know, we have 3 3-bedroom houses and 2 single accommodation flats. So, and you self-cater, so you look after yourself and you eat what you want to eat. So It's not really a problem
Mm.
for anybody.
Yeah, it's just the main kitchen.
Just the main house kitchen
Mm.
that is a vegetarian kitchen.
Mm.
And then if anybody else is a vegetarian or whatever in their own units, that's their choices. Or if they want to eat meat, that's their choices.
Mm.
So it's not restrictive in any way. And again, if you want to drink alcohol in your own unit, that's fine. Yeah, no problem with that. Yeah, so each to their own.
Mm.
You're speaking, David, and we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, and I may be cutting across Ray. I'm wondering how close you are to the city and how close you are to the hills.
The hills are outside our door.
Yeah.
We have the Lady Bower Dam is just behind us, and the Bamford Edges.
Yeah, Bamford Edge is just over there. Yeah, I mean, I could take my laptop and point it in that direction actually, but it might make you feel a bit seasick.
Yeah.
So
the other,
14 miles away from Sheffield.
The centre of Sheffield.
Yeah.
okay, great.
Mm.
So
And we are 3/4 of an hour from Manchester, the centre of Manchester.
So given that you have a £200,000 mortgage or something, £250,000, right? What sort of contribution do you need to have from people who would come and be with you?
Well, we're paying a rent of £360 a month, which is roughly 50 pence an hour.
Yeah.
So we pay 50 pence an hour to be here.
£12 a day. roughly.
£12 a day to be a community member and
Right.
work.
Well, that would save me £600 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, there you are.
You know, it's a big. So as briefly as I can say it, I went to a meeting at our council just 2 weeks ago, having been to a Quaker Living Witness event at Woodbrook.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a wonderful, you know, that's a place that could be a community 10 times the size of yours. That is also not got an economic model at the moment. But at the council, you know, we've been protesting and saying the government have got to fix things and when are they going to do it and how will they do it. The council said, yeah, well, we've given up on that. We don't think the government's going to solve climate change. So we've got together with all the other big cities and we are raising £200 billion to take the core cities carbon neutral. And in Holland, the city of Amsterdam have paid employees on the council whose job is to make sure that half the renewable energy is owned and operated by the community. That would be £100 billion worth of work for young people who would need to train, have experiences of living and working together and so on. So Ray's sort of hang in there goes with there's big initiatives coming along that could really take community to another level in this country. And, you know, so I definitely say hang in there. I'm sort of tempted.
Hope so.
We hope so.
Yeah. And none of my Extinction Rebellion friends are remotely aware. They're so busy shrieking at the government and the banking industry and the fossil fuel industry to stop doing the wrong thing, that they're not noticing that their own city is part of a group raising all the money needed to solve the problem.
Well,
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
But if you are going to be solving the problem, during that process, you need to institute the kind of governance that is inclusive. And I think Quakers come closest to understanding that. And so I took this idea to this conference at Woodbrook, and I was asked to write it up in a bit more depth with the socialist group and think tank I work with, and then bring it to our yearly meeting here, our area meeting here, and then possibly other area meetings around the country.
sounds good.
Yeah.
A very small aside, which I've just remembered and was amused by. One of our members, in fact, the clerk of our meeting, has a flat in Sheffield, and he is there at the moment after having broken his leg, falling off his electronic scooter.
Oh dear.
So I'll tell him that we had this meeting with you, and he could see it and that type of thing, and encourage him to come and have Quaker meeting with you guys sometimes.
That would be great.
Did you want to say something, Patsy? Sorry.
No, that wasn't. No.
That was right. Well, it is now 5 past the hour of, and unless anybody else wishes to say anything.
Well, I just to say,
Slight
it's been lovely to have you with us, and
Yes, we really appreciate it.
It's a
Been a
topic
rich
that's
discussion. Yeah.
topic that's super close to my heart.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And next week we shall have, and I look at my two friends expectantly.
We've got Jenny is going to be telling us more tales of her life in social work, as she's calling it, out of the frying pan into the fire.
Thank you very much. And bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.